There's an amazing article in Newsweek about just how bad the prison system in California was before the reforms that they implemented, and it's way worse than I could have dreamed up. They say, quote, "It's hard to find medical staff even for functional prisons. Vacancies in the California system ranged from 20% for doctors to 44% for X-ray technicians. Built to house roughly 80,000 people, California's prisons were stuffed with twice that many residents, prompting an official state of emergency." Isn't that stunning? They doubled the number that was the max. That's incredible, and I didn't even know that was possible. They say, quote, "With every cell full, prison officials had packed gymnasiums with double and triple bunks. In one such makeshift dormitory, a prisoner was beaten to death. No one on the prison staff even noticed for several hours. California's prisons amounted by 2011 to a systematic Eighth Amendment violation. The California example proves that imprisoning massive numbers of people fundamentally cannot comport with the Eighth Amendment." So let's pause there for a second. That's a really interesting argument. I've never heard it before. But what they're saying is, with mass incarceration, by definition, you're violating the Eighth Amendment, protection from cruel and unusual punishment, because when you have such a tremendous percentage of the population locked up, and as a raw number, so many people locked up, you cannot give adequate care and attention to everybody that's in there. By definition, you just can't. You don't have the numbers, you don't have the doctors, you don't have the psychiatrists, you don't have the ability to have them have the right amount of time outside of the cell and in the cell, and the right amount of time at lunch, and the right amount of time of supervision, and the list goes on. And they mentioned in the article that we're dealing with a situation where the prisoners are no longer treated in any way, shape, or form like human beings. It's just like you shove them in a room and call it a day. And you don't think twice about them, and the situation just gets worse. And there's zero chance of rehabilitation when a system is set up like this. But here's the most incredible part. They say, quote, "Imagine a society where convicts were sentenced to death by untreated renal failure or denial of chemotherapy. Modern Americans would surely consider such a place barbaric and cruel. Yet in the 1990s and 2000s, that was happening in California." They say in 2006, a preventable or possibly preventable death occurred somewhere in California's prison system once every 5 to 6 days. Okay, this is such an extreme situation that even the Supreme Court was like, yeah, you have to change it. You have to do something about it. The Supreme Court, this right-wing court that we have, there were only two dissenters, of course, Scalia, and probably Thomas was the other one. But everybody else was like, oh, sweet Jesus. They even, in a case on this, they even ended up releasing some of the photos to the public to show, like, how fucked up and barbaric the situation is. Like, if somebody, whenever people had a mental breakdown and, like, suicidal thoughts in one of the prisons in California, they would lock them in a cage that's, like, 5 feet by 5 feet. Just a little cage, and just lock them there and leave them there. Okay, that's only going to make it worse. That's only going to make it worse. So we could be dealing with suicidal people, they get no medical attention. People with renal failure, no medical attention. People with cancer, no medical attention. The numbers were simply too large to give everybody the proper prison sentence and care that they needed. So when it's that extreme where even this right-wing Supreme Court is like, you have to do something, you have to do something, then you know we've gotten to, an epidemic level of fuck-ups. And they spoke in the article here about various ways in which you can address the problem. But of course, the one that the route that California took was starting to release certain nonviolent drug criminals. That's like the biggest no-brainer in the world. I commend them for that, but the only reason they did it is out of necessity. Because it got to the point where it was so fucking bad that it's like, well, we either let people continue to die of cancer in our prisons, which are stuffed to 2 times their capacity, or we start releasing some, nonviolent drug criminals. Yeah, I would release the nonviolent drug criminals. Now some states are even having conversations about hard caps on the number of people that you can imprison. You know, at face value, I don't really like that idea per se, but at the same time, is it pragmatic? Is it practical given the situation that we face with the drug war and many other things? Yes. And they talk about instead of sending people directly to prison, there should be more steps in between, more steps with you have to go to psychiatry or rehab or this or that. All those things, it's like when you read the article, your response is, oh, we weren't doing that already? Like, everybody has this thing, this bias, where we just assume that because the system works the way it works, therefore there's some justification for it. And it's valid because it's been working this way for so long. But that's not sound reasoning. It's not like, oh, it exists, therefore it makes sense that it exists. No. It could be fucking riddled with all these loopholes and problems and issues, and nobody addresses them until it gets to an epidemic level where we can't hide it anymore. There's such a tremendous problem. And now we're at the point, specifically in California, where they're beginning to address it because it's so bad. But my message to the federal government after reading this piece is, with the opinion polls changing and with a lot of states changing with their drug laws, for you to not get ahead of it and do some sort of federal legislation on decriminalizing marijuana or something else, that would just be stupid. Like, you're stupid if you don't do it. It's that simple. Like, you're not paying attention, you're dense, you're not all there. And even with the lobbying efforts, like, I get it. The DEA is against it, and they're going to fight tooth and nail to stop it. Pharmaceutical companies are against it. Alcohol companies are against it, and they'll fight it, like the decriminalization of marijuana and a bunch of other stuff. But it's not like there's no money on the other side. There's now a booming industry with marijuana and with legal marijuana. And other companies that are involved in that, and investment firms are investing in that, and maybe they get involved and they lobby in the other direction. And we might be able to win on this even with all the big money on the other side, because now we're starting to get more money on our side. So you got to get ahead of it, and you got to fix this, because having a system in America where there are more people locked up than in Stalin's gulags at their height, at their peak, that's unacceptable, and there's no other way to put it. So let's fix it.